now we have the Onimusha anime, and that is something that really drew me into this. I know Netflix anime adaptations are very polarizing. Some people love them, some people hate them, and Onimusha, I love it, so I was interested in this. And then I saw the trailer to it and realized that they were using the likeness of Toshiro Mifune as the main character he's basically reprising his role as Musashi Miyamoto, which kind of sparked the video that I did recently, where I did the beginner's guide to Musashi and Vagabond, where I covered the 1939 novel, the Samurai Trilogy series, which Toshiro Mifune starred in that, and then the Vagabond manga. So one thing I want to say, if you care at all about spoilers, the anime, it goes over some historical events that are related to Musashi Miyamoto's past, and that can actually spoil events. Like, it'll tell you which enemies he killed, like which, substantial antagonist, I wouldn't say antagonist, but rivals he killed, and that does spoil a substantially just better experience. Pretty much any of those, with the movies, Samurai Trilogy, with the novel, or with the Vagabond manga. So if you care at all about experiencing those, don't watch Onimusha, because it's going to spoil it for that. And another spoiler warning, I will say a few things about this particular anime that may spoil certain things, but I don't think they're really that important, because I don't really think the anime is worth watching, but I will not say anything that will spoil the Musashi Vagabond Samurai Trilogy. I won't say anything to spoil that, because I actually care that you watch that and experience this, whereas with Onimusha, I could care less if anybody watched it, and I just wanted to share and vent my frustration with this. So in order to understand what Onimusha, the anime, is before I break it down, we have to just think about, like, what is it trying to be? First, it is an entry in the Onimusha franchise, and that's, I'll go into that. Secondly, it stars Toshiro Mifune as Musashi Miyamoto. And third, it is an action anime series. So we're going to judge it based on that and see how well it performs. So if you've never played the Onimusha franchise, it was initially intended to be an ancient Japanese spin-off of Resident Evil, because, Capcom makes them both, and they were supposed to be, like, spiritually connected. So Onimusha has a lot of the things that you would care about from the PS1 era Resident Evil games. So it's got this really dark, ominous atmosphere to it. It's got some puzzles. It's got these massive, grotesque monsters. And it's just so much fun. I really enjoy these games. And some of the things that I really liked about them, aside from this dark atmosphere, they had, the bosses. I really enjoyed the bosses, because I think you had to employ some degree of strategy when fighting them, but I personally would go out there and I would grind, because I was in a different mindset when I was playing these games back in the day. I would grind up the souls, and you would basically collect souls on the gauntlet on your arm, and you would use that to level up your weapons, and then that would increase their power. It would give them a new visual for the weapon skin, and it would also make your special attack larger. So I would do all the grinding as much as possible there, just so that I could see the cool new transformations, and then I'd go into the boss and then just immediately just slay it, because I had so many of those special abilities stacked up. So in a nutshell, Onimusha is about the horror elements, it's about the big bosses, it's about the cool weapons, and also it had this really powerful, almost like demigod of a antagonist here, Nobunaga Oda, who teamed up with these like demons, and they gave him all these special powers and whatever, and he can it's not really that deep of a story, to be honest with you. It's probably the lowest bar if you're going to make an anime adaptation of Onimusha, because the story was never really all that much. But the fact that you've got the same villain for 3 games, it kind of links together, even though some of the protagonists are different. Oh, and the protagonist of Onimusha 2, they were great. You really had a good connection with those characters. They really grew on you, and you cared about them, and you got different endings depending on which one you wanted to prefer as you play through. So that was pretty cool. You get different endings in a game like this. So now that I've established what the Onimusha games were known for, how does the anime stack up against that? So first things first, it fails in general atmosphere. It's not horrific or spooky. It's not ominous or dark or mysterious. I would say it's closer to being serene and colorful, and it's relaxing, and I like it, but I just don't want that in Onimusha because that's not what Onimusha is. Like, if I see more of this in another anime, great, I'm all for it because it looks good, but it just does not fit Onimusha. What about the enemies? Okay, so the zombies, I think they did a good job of getting the canonically accurate zombies in the samurai armor, but at the same time, I think they looked better on the PS2 cutscenes, and that is saying a lot, in my opinion. The anime still has such a very far and long way to go before CG impresses me on average, and I think a lot of people feel that way too. There are some times when it looks pretty good, like the fights, they can be pretty exciting, all the stuff flying around. CG work is impeccable for camera angles, in dynamic camera angles, and also particle effects. Everything else just is not working right now, and I think we need a lot of time before that is impressive. So regarding the bosses, unfortunately, the anime also fails here too, because the closest thing we get to some of these wild and creative monsters that we got in the games are just some vascular looking zombie dudes with funky looking arms and hentai tongues, and it's just, I don't think it's fun. I don't think it's creative. It's definitely not scary in the same way that the Onimusha games were. Like, I remember this scene in the first game where there was like, this woman started transforming into like a moth demon or something. I can't remember exactly, but it still sticks with me. I didn't watch any clips of the games or whatever, but I just have such vibrant memories about it. In terms of the weapons, okay, so the Onimusha games are known for their wild and crazy fantasy weapons. Anime is known for its wild and crazy fantasy weapons too, so it sounds like it's a match made in heaven, but unfortunately, nobody in the Onimusha anime uses any special weapons. And really, there were nothing compared to what we get in the Onimusha games, and I felt that was pretty boring, because in the games, you got all these wild swords and stuff, and that was just part of the fun of it. The anime really feels like Dynasty Warriors, and Musashi is just swinging around like this tornado, and I guess that could compare for like the wind weapon or whatever, because that would make tornadoes too, but it's a long shot from the Onimusha games, and it's just unfortunate to see the form that the anime has taken. In terms of the gauntlet and transformations, I didn't talk about this, but the main character wears a gauntlet in the Onimusha games and also the anime, and the gauntlet is given to him by these Oni, and they're basically in a war against the Genmas, two different forces of demons, basically. So whenever the protagonist kills a demon, he can absorb their soul, and the souls, it refills his health, his special abilities, allows him to level up his weapons. We don't get the latter in here. We do see that it heals him, which is pretty interesting, and we also see that he gets to transform into the Onimusha, as we see within the games too. I think that, I can commend them on certain areas of the anime here, because they took the gauntlet and they went a different direction with it. And I like where they were going here, because in the games, you just collect the souls and it's just a means to upgrade your stuff and to heal yourself. But in the anime, it actually takes a toll on his humanity, because he's like becoming closer to being a demon and whatever. And I thought that was interesting. It's just something a little bit more than the games were. So I will commend it on that. Just overall, I should talk about the characters also, because I mentioned the Onimusha 2 characters. I think the entire Onimusha game franchise had good characters. Kaede, I think that's her name, in Onimusha 1, she wasn't as complex as the side characters in the other games, but I still liked having her around. I thought she was cool. And the characters in Onimusha 2, they were a lot of fun because they were pretty complex, and I think they were well written, and you got the multiple endings or whatever. Onimusha 3 probably did the best job, but it's only got one side character, and he's played by the actor Jean Reno, the French actor, which I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but I like him. He's done some good movies, so I enjoyed seeing him in that, and he played the part well. The character, it goes into his family life, his backstory and everything, and I really enjoyed the character. In the Onimusha anime, there were just far too many characters for the episode count. There were like 7 significant characters, and I think some of them died off early, but they became relevant through like flashbacks and stuff. And I think that they also had the right idea with some of these characters, because there were some twists to their backstories and things you didn't expect for them, but there was not nearly enough episodes for it to space it out, for us to really care about these characters. So how does the anime stack up against the games? Outside of the gauntlet and the Oni transformation, I would say this is a total failure, because it's just so different, and it doesn't make any sense why they would even call this Onimusha. It makes me think about Final Fantasy Spirits Within, where they had a pretty decent movie in its own right, from what I remember, and it's really beautiful, and then they slap the Final Fantasy name on it. But what doesn't make sense here is that the Final Fantasy name carries weight. Onimusha, as much as I love it, as much as I wish they would make more of it, doesn't. They haven't had a relevant entry. Nothing has come out since the PS2 era, and the only thing that I think came out was a remaster of the first game, and that wasn't even successful enough to have them continuously do it. So what's weird about the Onimusha anime is that they chose a Musashi Miyamoto from another historical fiction story. So they basically took the likeness of Toshiro Mifune from the 1950 Samurai Trilogy, which is an adaptation of the 1939 novel. So they basically locked themselves down into another person's canon. If they were to just draw straight from history and do something different, you can be as creative as you want. So say, for example, I make a movie about Abe Lincoln fighting a bunch of zombies. It's one thing if I base the character model off of Lincoln's iconic historical reference that everyone already recognizes. It's another thing if I were to dig up Henry Fonda out of his grave for him to reprise his 1939 role in Young Mr. Lincoln. It doesn't make any sense. It's confusing because it makes people think it's tied in to somebody else's story, like some sort of alternate universe future, and it's pretty disrespectful to the actor, to be honest. What they've done is basically drag a dead man out of his grave for the worst performance of his career, and I think that's very disrespectful. This is not an homage. An homage is basically like Star Wars Visions. What was it? The Duel, the first episode in that. That was very respectful, and it was tasteful. Everything about the Onimusha anime feels like it's taking things of popularity and extracting from it, and it's not really paying anything back because it's not good enough to send people out to experience these other things. It's a thing that people are going to watch because they like the other things, and they're going to come away unimpressed by it. In terms of the character of Musashi himself, getting aside from, well, actually, I could talk more about Toshiro Mifune's role in this movie as Musashi Miyamoto, because for one, he doesn't even look like him. Like, I don't even know why they had to use his name in the trailers for this, because it does not look like him. It's weird because when you look at what Toshiro Mifune looked like in the role of Musashi Miyamoto, movies 1, 2, and 3, I'll post them right here so that you can see the widespread of them all. He never looked like this, like he does in the Onimusha anime. You know who he does look like in the Onimusha anime? He looks like Yojimbo, or actually Sanjuro and Yojimbo. I think it's the same character, supposed to be the same character in both those movies, and he looks like them. Totally unrelated movies. And you know what? He doesn't even act like Musashi's character within the Samurai Trilogy. He acts like Kikuchiyo in the Seven Samurai movie. He's just the silly guy, comedic relief character, and there's really, like, it's all over the place, and it just, nothing here makes sense if you understand all of the things that inspired this. I mean, they didn't have to do it. They could have just made him look like some regular random dude, which he kind of does look like, because he doesn't look like Toshiro Mifune. They're basically rehashing everything that Musashi did in his life. A lot of the major rivals, I'm not going to name them, that he killed in the story came back to life, and he just fights them again. And it's not creative in the least. So I would think, in regards to them having the likeness of Toshiro Mifune as Musashi Miyamoto for its protagonist, I would say that is another fail. And that's like the two biggest things when I look at this, and they're just like washes here, and it just is not good. So regarding the anime by itself as an action anime, like, it's a 3.5 out of 10 if we were to include everything into it, knowing what I know about Musashi and Mifune and also the Onimusha. But taking all of that stuff away, I would say this is probably closer to a 5.5 out of 10, maybe even a 6 as a stretch. It's just like CG anime, for example, just starting off there. I'm not a fan of it. I like things like Gundam Hathaway, Gant Zero, but those are really like long shots. Those are incredibly rare. But something like this, I feel like it capitalized on the things that I think CG anime it does right, or it does best, basically, which is essentially going to be scene choreography and scene composition. So this has got all of these beautiful scenes where the camera has got these dynamic movements through the forest and everything, and I thought that was absolutely beautiful, and it really blew me away in some of these scenes. Like the people who did the background art here, another thing, they did a tremendous job of that. It totally does not match the Onimusha aesthetic and feeling, but they still did a really good job of the background art. Pretty much every scene was just beautiful. They had, you know, like the scene with a fish in it. They put a lot of time into that, but then at the same time, it's like, you look at this fish and the flowing water and everything, and you're like, damn, this is a really beautiful anime. But then I show you some of the characters animating. They look like those animatronic like mall characters that you would see during Christmas or something like that. It really is bad. But at the same time, there were some scenes that the characters had very subtle facial emotions, and like in the beginning when Musashi was with the monk who was praying, like there was a subtle exchange there that I thought was good. So my overall feeling with this project is that some people on the team were just experts at what they were doing, and other people either were constrained by time constraints or they just didn't have the skill level to do what those other people did. And because there's such a massive divide there, the contrast makes it more apparent. In terms of the action itself, like I said, the action was nothing like Onimusha, but at the same time, it was fast-paced. It was like Dynasty Warriors with zombies. So as far as the story goes, I feel like every piece of exposition is just info dumped in monologues, but anytime there was some sort of side character that had some dramatic reveal or whatever, it felt like just some cartoon villain or Bond villain where they're just like got you tied up and they're explaining their whole plan and everything because they ain't got nobody else to talk to. And I just did not enjoy that aspect of it. The whole story, they're basically traveling through rural Japan, going up the mountain because basically, they're going up the mountain, this long thing. It's pretty much like 60% of the anime is them traveling to the location to find this guy. And we always hear about him. He's this big mysterious guy. They're saying he did this in his past and he did this and he's this type of person, just alluding to it, building up this suspense of like, who is he going to be? I mean, not really, but you got to feel something about the story, and that was the one thing I was thinking about. Like, who is this guy they keep alluding to? Then we get there, and he is the most annoying dude, and he immediately just gets betrayed, and it's just not enjoyable, and it's very anticlimactic. As much as I wanted the Onimusha anime to be good, and for it to have this revival of the Onimusha franchise, in retrospect, am happy that it failed simply because of what they did with Toshiro Mifune. Like, if this were to succeed, what sort of terrible precedent would it set for using other dead actors and things like that? Just let them rest and let's appreciate their movies for what they were. I didn't like the Onimusha anime, and I don't think you should watch it unless you really are curious about it. And if you are someone who's curious about Musashi in terms of the novel, in terms of the 1950s movie, and also in terms of Vagabond, watch my beginner's guide to that. Don't watch this anime because they will info dump Musashi's history in relation to that story and just spoil everything for you in terms of fights and stuff. I mean, it's not the end of the world because I think the journey is more important than the fights in the Musashi story, but still, I would rather not know these things going into it. Anyways, that's all for this video. What did you think about the Onimusha anime? Let me know your thoughts on that. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon with another video.